Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, we are at it again with another bit of misinformation, misinformative tribalism that has been occurring across the gacha space by a bunch of disgruntled, angry, and butthurt Hoyoverse players, because they are back at it again with another shot at Wuthering Waves, another shot at Powercreep, and this time, here's the post. If you ever think Genshin or HSR Powercreep is bad, just remember that WuWa has an empty space between Tier 0 and Tier 1. And this is naturally a very tribalistic post over here that's gotten a bunch of views, a bunch of engagement, even a community note as well, showing off the Whimpering Wastes tier list in Wuthering Waves. What these individuals don't seem to realize, though, is that by trying to take shots at Wuthering Waves, all they've actually shown with this post is that Hiyuki, the newest release character in the game, is objectively worse than, in this game mode, 2 past units that already got released. Typically, this is the way that power creep works. It's when a newly updated or a newly released character enters a tier list or enters a comparison against other units and then proceeds to do better than all of the old ones. This at a baseline has to be the opposite of power creep because they're showing the new unit do worse than 2 other ones. And do you want to know how much older certain units are over here? Frolova is a version 2.5 character. We're on version 3.3. Frolova is close to, if not older than, 200 days old. And I think is older than half a year, 1000%. Hiyuki is releasing into this game and is worse than a unit that got released over half a year ago. And, comparatively, on this tier list, is at the same level as the oldest limited unit in the game. Ladies and gentlemen, this is where the attacks against WuWa are going. Showing off a tier list where the newest unit in the game is rated the same as the oldest limited unit in the game, and they're calling for power creep. You can probably guess what's going on over here, right? We're under attack by a bunch of dipshits. But naturally, that's the perfect thing that should be occurring. While Wuthering Waves, it's on its anniversary. It's got a lot of content to do in the update. People are very happy with where the game is going. And of course, you just have a bunch of dog shit when it comes to your other games, when it comes to Genshin Impact, when it comes to Honkai Star Rail, and of course, I know it's not listed on here, but when it comes to ZZZ as well. Because the reality holds very, very, very true for even our other tier lists that you're seeing specifically in the Tower of Adversity, where you're seeing so many units within tiers 0 through 1 that it's kind of absurd. And even the newest units, right, like Hiyuki, aren't going ahead and breaking the damage ceiling, and other characters, right, are competing just perfectly fine with some of the top performers in the game like Imith. But you want to know what's something that doesn't get talked about over here? Just how bad the power creep is in other games. Because why don't we just go ahead and, when it comes to Honkai Star Rail, why don't we take a look at their version of the Pridewind tier list? I wonder how long I'm going to have to wait to see, how long is it going to take me to find a 1.x character in Honkai Star Rail? Let's see here. Oh, I guess Bronya's still decent. Yeah, I guess Bronya's still there. Oh, Kafka after her rework is there? Oh, okay, sure. Seela in 1.5, Blade in tier 2, Jingliu in tier 2, Jingyuan in tier 3. I mean, there's just not really that many characters left. Yeah, there's just not really that many characters left. Isn't it more of an issue to have this many characters in tier 0? You think that this is good balance and this is good power creep? Isn't it just more power creep if more than half the units in the fucking game are in tier 0? Most would say that's actually the biggest indicator of power creep going on when every new character is coming in and every new unit is at the top alongside every rework. Because remember, power creep extends beyond the new releases. It also goes to reworks or maybe buffs that you do to the older units. Oh, I guess it's a little bit more leveled out in pure fiction. Doesn't look nearly as bad. But then over here, it's the same exact goddamn photo. This game just has 90% of its recent releases showing up in the top halves. And so while it doesn't look like they're power creeping kits as much and making them required for certain bosses, we still have this amazing example from HSR over here, ladies and gentlemen. Y'all remember this bad boy? Why don't we read a little bit about what this motherfucker does? Basically, you pull Castorus, and you use Castorus against Pollux, or you fucking lose. Yeah, we all remember how this guy worked, right? Where he would, like, have a shit ton of damage reduction, and then start taking additional damage, the more HP you were able to convert. And guess what unit rapidly consumes HP on your team, and then rapidly heals you at the same time? Fucking Castorus. And they just basically made it so that unless you had this character, Castorus, for this fight, you were essentially fucked. I have never seen a release as shield as this one before. But you want to know what they decided to do? They decided to do a little bit less of this in HSR. But do you want to know what else they did in other games? They took that shilling and decided to take it exactly to Genshin Impact. Because I've got a bit of an interesting discovery for us to talk about over here. Why don't we just take it from some Genshin Impact creators themselves? How shield this boss is.
And we will have to face a total of 9 Geo Shields.
Do I need to even speak anymore? This is Genshin's endgame. They spawned a boss with 9 Geo Shields. And you want to know what the best way is to break Geo Shields? It's to deal Geo damage so that they can sell their Geo sub DPS. And then also the Geo DPS too, because you gotta pull that Yi Zhuan clone for her to work properly. Bro, this is how Genshin's endgame is working. Maybe you don't need power creep as much, right? When you can just design bosses and design endgame content that's impossible unless you pull the latest unit.
These are technically all different layers that we have to deal with.
Bro, that's fucking crazy, is it not? But this is the thing. You want to know what else this phase does? This dude's just talking about all the different ways to break the shield. When the shields pop, 70% of the Geo damage that you did and only 10% of the non-Geo damage that you did is going to apply to the enemy when those shields pop.
Because every hit during this phase will have its damage recorded, and once the shield is down.
And so if you run Geo damage, and then you're hitting the shields, you'll actually deal damage to this boss when the shields explode. But if you're not running Geo teams, you only deal 10% of the damage that you normally would have.
With 70% of all the Geo damage, including Lunar Crystallites, and 10% of any other source of damage will be dealt to the boss.
And you want to know what else you need to do for this fucking Moon Gecko bastard, bro? This dude's out here talking about all the different ways you can break the shield. I ain't got fucking time for that. We gotta look at the other shielding that this boss has.
This mechanic makes the boss have a permanent 70% resistance to every element.
Permanent 70% resistance to every element!
And we of course don't want that. Now, after a brief stun phase, the boss will wake up, increase its Geo resistance, and start another phase we need to be careful about. You see, this boss is not only a Geo or Poise damage check, but it also has a massive healing check.
So you wanna know who does Geo damage, who heals the entire party, and can deal with all this shit? Boom! They literally designed a boss and put it into the game. If you don't pull this unit, we're gonna make it so the boss has all of these requirements that only this unit is able to deal with. It will have minus 99.9% damage taken. And if you pull Linnea and use her, all the damage debuffs disappear. Brother, that is how Genshin Impact designs its endgame. And you wanna know what the craziest thing about Linnea is too? She also just raised the damage ceiling. Does anyone have the Genshin Impact damage numbers? This bitch raised the damage ceiling in the game too, on top of having a boss this shield. I'm pretty sure there are more mechanics that I could look at, but I don't think it really matters at this point. They designed the bosses so that they're unbeatable without pulling the character. And then this character is also the strongest unit in the game at the same time. It's a double whammy. You would kind of hope that it was just one over the other, but instead they decided to do both. Retardedly shield enemy design and retarded raises in the damage ceiling. And these idiots out here, these dumb shits out here, are complaining about the fact, guys, that there's a gap between tier 0 and tier 1. Complaining about the fact that the oldest limited unit in the game is performing the same or at the same level as the newest limited one in the game, and that the newest limited character in the game isn't as good as the older releases. Well, this is the abomination that's in their game. And this is the thing. You don't even need to take my word for it. Everyone thinks this boss is dog shit. Everyone thinks this boss is fucking trash. Bro, the amount of posts that you see people bitching and moaning, and I think this statement is the best. At this point, the worst Stygian boss is always the next one. Because guess what they had before, guys? Genshin already did this before. Bro, apparently this bastard
exact damage.
gets
Then,
like a
exactly
giga massive shield. And the fastest way to break it is to use lunar reactions against him.
Bursts, and then after on.
So it's like, hey, unless you use lunar reactions and you go build the latest lunar team, go fuck yourself.
Fielding for a bit, setting up every.
Bro just summons these little bastards to like charge up his shield. And unless you're using lunar attacks, the newest Nod Cry teams, good luck breaking the fucking shield and actually dealing damage to him. This would be like Wuthering Waves doing something like this. They release Hiyuki, and she's the most retardedly broken character in the game. Then they proceed to make it so that, like, I don't know, just imagine it this way. I'm putting on my Satan hat. I'm pretending to be like a Genshin Impact dev. They, like, release this guy as, like, a boss, and then they're just like this. He's gonna have 70% resistance to all damage unless he's afflicted by Glacio Chafe. Yeah, I like that. Unless he's afflicted by Glacio Chafe or Havoc Bane, he's gonna have 70% resistance to all damage. Yeah, let's just put that in the game. And so, if you don't have Hiyuki, go fuck yourself. You're not clearing this dude. Or, if you don't have, Chisa, go fuck yourself. You're not clearing this dude. Genshin's devs just put shit like that in the game. Or it's like for Sigilum. Yeah, unless he's affected by Toon Rupture, he has a permanent shield that regenerates. Or against this boss? Oh, fuck it. Unless they're afflicted by Air Erosion from Cardathea or Chacona, they take 50% less damage. That would be the Genshin Impact way of designing their content. This game doesn't do that. This game, honestly, has never done that. I think that there's only one instance, actually, in like recent history where something similar to that has been done. And I think it's for like these fucking... I think these things have like a level of like damage reduction or some shit like that. Yeah, these things have like some type of damage reduction or something like that. Unless they get inflicted with like Tomb Break. I think that's something that's in the game. Annoying as hell, but these enemies don't show up that often. And I think it's only like, yeah, we've only got like 2 versions of them in the game. So yeah, until you like Tomb Break them, they have like 25% all attribute resistance unless you Toon Rupture them. I don't find their design to be that great. I think their design is pretty fucking annoying, but at least they're limited to like 1 enemy every reset, and they're typically not like the tankiest fight on the floor. These developers over at Hoyoverse are just straight up making the entire boss fight a shield disaster at every single difficulty level in their exclusive boss rush mode. And when you compare it to the boss rush mode that we've had in our game, right, End State Matrix, one thing you know for certain is that End State Matrix has some of the most unshield bosses ever, where the only effect that they have is that, like, they take less damage or they take more damage, and you just can't use the same attribute as the boss. That is the only restriction that you've ever had when it comes to this content. And these guys are the ones talking about how much better Powercreep is in their games. It's not enough to just raise the damage ceiling, ladies and gentlemen. You've also got to make enemy design impossible to beat unless you pull the character too. You're being pressured in multiple ways when it comes to Hoyoverse games. It happened once in HSR. It happens all the time in Genshin. And well, guess what, guys? ZZZ, it happens there too. All you need to do is read this goofy shit that these developers are putting in when it comes to their boss rush mode. Bro, while the corruptive barrier is active, anomaly damage dealt by agents is increased by 50%. Use anomaly and also make sure you can stun the boss too. There's only one anomaly team in the game, by the way, that stuns the boss. It's the Angels of Delusion one. Yeah, unless you do that, the boss is unkillable. You also can't do critical hits against the boss either. He has critical hit immunity. They do this shit against all of their bosses, bro. They do this shit on everything, every side. And it's so gross to have 3 games that are all doing the same fucking thing. And the same fucking thing is make the bosses so annoying, so disgusting, and so unfun to fight unless you pull the latest character. Go grind these bosses. Go grind perfect disc drives, perfect gear, all of this shit, just so that you have, like, a fighting chance against this content. And if you don't, go fuck yourself. Go play the game like a job. Because there are going to be people that go out there and they're able to clear this maybe with a non-Geo team. There are going to be people, right, that go out there. They're maybe able to clear this without a Night Soul team. There are going to be people, right, that go out there. They might be able to clear this without the Angels of Delusion. Or they clear Pollux, right, without having casters. That's entirely possible. But you're in such a ridiculously minor part of the population to be doing that. Do you think it's like a badge of honor to be able to beat every end state matrix boss, or to be able to full clear the TOA, or to be able to full clear WuWa? Not particularly, because the content isn't made to be unmanageable without pulling the newest units. And half of, like, kind of like this chip of honor that, like, Hoyo endgame players seem to have is that they're able to work through the developers being fucking bastards and balancing the game like shit just to sell the newest unit. And they're turning that into a plus. And that's the true breakdown over here when it comes to power creep. That's the true take over here when it comes to balancing across these games. You have to deal with damage ceilings getting raised in Hoyoverse's games. You have to deal with shield enemy design, where it isn't even enough to have a good team. You need to have a good team that also happens to be the right team for this specific bit of content. And if the stars don't align, well, guess what? You're going to have a terrible time. And for the stars to align, you better get ready to spend hundreds, if not thousands of dollars every fucking patch. Because that's how these devs are designing these games moving forward. And that's why people are attacking WuWa. Because it's the one title that's decided not to balance the game like fucking devils. But who knows? Maybe Kuro will fall into the temptation in the future. But as far as I can tell, with Sagrika being the strongest meta character in the game, in both game modes, tier 0 over here and then tier 0 over here, and she's also the least popular unit in the history of the game, well, Kuro doesn't have a lot of reasons to particularly do that, because meta isn't really a reason for people to pull in this title. I think we're in good hands. We'll have to see. Hopefully we don't get unlucky. Let me know what you all thought. Peace out.